Welcome to the KIX EMAP podcast, a podcast where we interview important leaders in education from Europe, Middle East and North Africa, and the Asia and Pacific regions. I'm your host, Ryan Allen, assistant professor at Soka University of America here in Orange County, California. My own background is in international and comparative education. I just wanted to drop a little update from the podcast. This is our second episode after the recent extension of the KIX program and our KIX EMAP hub until 2027. You probably noticed a number of changes occurring in the hub recently, including the rebrand from EAP to EMAP. This means we welcome 14 new countries into the hub, and we're certainly excited about these new interview opportunities. Additionally, we will be introducing a couple of new innovations to the KIX EMAP podcast, with special episodes where we will have more than one guest for conversations around specific themes that are of interest to the audience. So be on the lookout for those. Thank you. Let's start the show. Today we have Selin Turan, a researcher at Warchild, an NGO based in Amsterdam. We actually met when I hosted her on a panel at our EPIC 2023 conference last summer. I'll link to that material in the show notes. It was really nice just to dive more into her research and background during this interview. Let's jump to the show. All right, Selin, welcome to the show. It's great to have you on after chatting at EPIC 2023 early in the summer. And if we can get into it, you have degrees from 3 different countries: Turkey, Italy, and Russia. And maybe can you talk about that globalized education path? How did that lead into your development work? Is this what you had kind of always thought you were going to do with your profession career?
Hello, Ryan. First of all, it's a pleasure to be part of this podcast series. I really enjoyed the previous episodes and was inspired by listening to the stories and projects of others in our KIX community. Thank you very much for the invitation. I would say from a young age, I was captivated by the power of civil society, how civil society supports amplifying the voices of people, defending and protecting human rights, and demanding people's concerns and needs to be addressed, which influenced my decision to obtain a social sciences degree. I studied political sciences and international relations for my bachelor's, which I would say really laid the foundational ground as I studied subjects such as international law, political sociology, international relations, and international organizations. During this time, I also developed an interest in the policy-making process, particularly in the public policy field, and I spent my 3rd year in Italy continuing to study political sciences at the University of Bologna, which still has a very special place in my heart today. For my master's following that route, I moved to Moscow, Russia, to study public policy and political analysis at the Higher School of Economics, which is a university that was established in the 90s, inspired by the model of London School of Economics in the UK, with the idea of having a research university that is really focusing on the fields of economics and social sciences, which wasn't available back then. Around this time, I was interested in gaining more comparative insights between Russia and Turkey regarding youth political engagement, youth political participation, and youth activism, as they shared some interesting sociopolitical similarities at the time. I graduated from the Public Policy Department with a specialization in human rights and democratic governance, with a particular focus on non-Western societies. After my studies, I had a brief experience in the media sector. However, I realized my true passion lay in the humanitarian field, where I could really contribute to positive change and impact on society. In summary, I would say my educational journey has really given me the understanding of different perspectives, different cultures, and a deep understanding of the public policy field, but also encouraged me to pursue a career in the development sector.
Wow, wonderful. That's great. Let's get into that meaningful change. You're now doing research for the organization Warchild. Can you maybe introduce our audience to this organization? What's kind of the mission? What's the goal? And maybe what's your kind of day-to-day like working there?
Well, glad to respond to this question. Warchild is a humanitarian organization working to improve the resilience and psychosocial well-being of children and youth affected by conflict. I'm currently based in its research and development department and working alongside a wonderful group of researchers. Our department developed a care system which focuses on supporting all levels of a child's life through a combination of psychosocial support and mental health, child protection, and education methods. These different innovations and methods complement each other and reinforce one another when used together. We believe that through such complementary care and support system, and of course through rigorous research, we ensure that children and youth will get the best possible care. For the past 3.5 years, more specifically, I've been working as part of a global research team for the implementation and management of a multi-year research program in Chad, Sudan, and Uganda, supported by the Global Partnership for Education and Knowledge and Innovation Exchange. Our research focuses on scaling education technology innovations to provide children with access to quality and equitable education. And at the heart of it, we have War Child's evidence-based education technology innovation called Can't Wait to Learn. Our research aimed to generate knowledge and evidence on how to adapt and scale up an education technology program in conflict-affected and low-resource settings. We adopted a holistic approach and evaluated the effectiveness of Can't Wait to Learn when embedded in formal education, the ways to monitor and maintain quality implementation at scale, the drivers of cost, and ways to improve cost effectiveness of the program, the improvement in equitable access, attendance, and retention through the engagement of caregivers, and the education technology ecosystem and policy landscape in each of these countries in terms of actors, relationships, challenges, and opportunities for EdTech to really understand how we can best leverage this ecosystem for scaled implementation of Can't Wait to Learn. I consider myself very lucky because I love my job and get to work with inspiring, dedicated, motivated, and most importantly, curious people around the world. Nowadays, my days are full of exciting work, focusing on research dissemination to share key findings, key insights, and recommendations from our research program. How do I contribute to this with my day-to-day work? As a knowledge mobilization and engagement coordinator, I engage with various education stakeholders such as ministries of education, local government members, Global Partnership for Education, Knowledge and Innovation Exchange community, international development sector actors, and of course community members through various meetings, workshops, and dissemination events, producing knowledge products such as reports, research findings, summaries, and policy briefs to communicate our key findings, and also trying to really understand what these different stakeholders need when it comes to knowledge and evidence, and understanding their communication preferences so that we know what is the most effective way for us to influence decision-making process and make meaningful contributions with our research to policy and practice.
Hey, that's wonderful. Yeah, and I know one of your colleagues that you worked in research with, Robin Shields, and I know he does really wonderful work. So that's fantastic that you sort of get this wide research network that where people are doing wonderful work and coming together really are, from a true globalized perspective. So that's wonderful. Maybe if we can dive into that research project that you talked about. So you presented the paper, Who and What Plays a Role in EdTech Policy in Conflict-Affected Countries, a multi-country policy analysis at EPIC 2023, and that's where we met earlier this summer. So can you maybe talk about this report? It's on Chad, Uganda, and Sudan. So kind of what were the main findings there? And, maybe if you can provide some of the examples of success that you were able to find.
Yes, definitely. As part of this research, actually, I collaborated with Robin Shields, Francine Menashe, and Samira Chatila. It was a wonderful group of researchers, and I feel really lucky to be able to work with them on this research. Together, we've designed and conducted a policy network analysis in Chad, Sudan, and Uganda. who and what plays a role in education technology policy and program development, adoption and scale-up in conflict-affected countries. The ecosystem that influences education technology, such as the policy environment, operations, actors in education technology sectors in these countries, and relationships between them, and therefore offer a holistic understanding of the challenges and opportunities for education technology in conflict-affected countries. Traditionally, the education system has been seen as a hierarchical and static system. However, it is increasingly understood as a complex and dynamic system in which resources, knowledge, ideas, and opportunities travel across different pathways amongst different actors. Social network analysis is a process of investigating this ecosystem and understanding the social and political structures in it. This is why we combined policy with social network analysis to develop a better understanding of this dynamic system, the actors in it, their relationships with each other, and how all these factors influence education technology scale up and adoption. So, what our findings reveal, education technology can support national policy priorities. Our study identified a critical need for infrastructure development, including reliable electricity, expanded connectivity, which currently act as barriers to education technology scale up and adoption. Across all three countries, we also found a pressing need to enhance and strengthen teachers' digital capacity and skills. Education technology can play an important role in supporting this and contribute to teachers' professional development. Thus, it has the potential to align with the national policy priorities related to infrastructural development, teacher capacity strengthening and development, as these investments can yield benefits beyond the realm of edtech and positively impact the national education systems. Secondly, edtech plays a pivotal role in strengthening the education network. Internet providers and telecom companies hold pivotal roles in edtech as they can influence costs and enhance access to internet and data. The private sector seems to be invested and already working in technology fields massively. However, we observe that they're more peripheral in this education technology network. Thus, connecting the private sector to the network better and tapping into their expertise and funding can benefit the education system as a whole. In addition, we found that governments could play a key role in this. For example, we heard from our research participants that in Sudan, the Ministry of Education was previously collaborating with the Ministry of Communication to negotiate better internet access for schools and better prices, leveraging private sector involvement in technology to support the education system as a whole. So overall, a connected, strengthened network will increase coordination and improve knowledge and information sharing in the education sector. Lastly, we acknowledge the concern raised about edtech potentially exacerbating disparities. During COVID-19 pandemic, we unfortunately witnessed the harsh reality that students in rural areas had almost no access to any learning due to limited access to electricity, internet, infrastructure, and lack of availability or distribution of devices. However, children in urban areas has better access to learning opportunities and also have more familiarity with education technology. Here, I really want to emphasize that these concerns also highlight an opportunity. Education technology, when designed thoughtfully, can unlock its full potential and can be a very powerful tool to close these gaps. Programs or initiatives, such as War Child's Can't Wait to Learn, designed to reach the most vulnerable and hard-to-reach children with all these contextual needs and challenges in mind, can thrive in challenging contexts.
Wow, yeah, that's I definitely we see that time and time again, sort of these rural and urban divides, and so it's I think it's really important to be working on this area, and we'll go ahead and post some of the reports in our show notes, so people can kind of look and see those success stories and see that research, the policy analysis and their social network analysis is really fascinating and innovative work here. But it's one of those things, you finish one project and it's really great, but it's on to the next one. So, what is next? What are you kind of working on now?
Happy to share that we actually recently received an extension to our research program for a duration of 1 year, in which we will conduct additional studies. This is great news as we plan to conduct a follow-up study to the cluster randomized control trial that was conducted during the last phase of our research to evaluate whether Calm Way to Learn leads to sustained learning effects. In addition, we aim to generate exploratory evidence for the effectiveness of Calm Way to Learn with subgroups, such as girls and children with disabilities. We recently handed over the Calm Way to Learn program implementation and management to the District Education Office of Isingiro in Uganda, where the previous cluster randomized control trial took place. We now plan an adoption study to produce guidance on the transition of Calm Way to Learn, management and implementation from War Child to a district education office, meaning to the government. Lastly, we will use an iterative and participatory approach. We will work with key education stakeholders to co-design and create knowledge mobilization strategies, knowledge products that aim to influence policy and practice for evidence and knowledge, and also for Calm Way to Learn program at the national level. During this last phase of our research, we acknowledge the importance of having a participatory approach to knowledge mobilization and engage and collaborate with various education stakeholders to achieve uptake. My team and I now will focus our efforts on working with various education stakeholders, as the Ministry of Education and Sports in Uganda, District Education Office, or other local education actors, schools and communities to understand their needs in terms of what data and evidence they need, what capacity they want to build, and how we can help them as researchers to achieve their education goals and priorities. Through this iterative and participatory model, we will decide together what knowledge products are the most useful and what is the best way to deliver the evidence and knowledge to them. I look forward to collaborating on this and working on various knowledge products. This includes policy briefs, this can include videos, reports, and other materials and workshops that are really tailored to the specific needs of these different stakeholders. We will together hopefully bridge the gap between research, policy, and practice and achieve real uptake.
Right. Well, that's what it's all about. Sometimes we're spread out in our work, especially I'm an academic. So I kind of see us over here in our journals, and maybe we're not talking to the policymakers and maybe we're not talking to the NGOs, but we're all doing work that can relate and cross over. So I think it's important what you're doing to bring those pieces together. We're kind of coming to the end, and my final question, I think, relates to that idea of bringing people together. At KIX, we're consistently trying to bring different actors and stakeholders and from different regions around the world, and this show definitely has that sort of goal in mind. But one of the challenges is in just coordinating and bringing different efforts together. So, what do you do at War Child, or how do you go about that? Maybe do you have some kind of best practices in this type of collaboration, and maybe some tips or something for our audience?
This is a great question. As you said, it's really important. Sometimes as researchers, we find it difficult to conduct the research at the most quality way possible, and at the same time do knowledge mobilization, engage with these different stakeholders, and maintain strong relationships. I believe it links well with the topic of knowledge mobilization and exchange. Coordinating efforts and making meaningful comparisons on a regional and global scale is undeniably a challenge. Throughout our KIX-supported research, we recognize the importance of collaboration and also comparison, synthesizing our findings and try to see what's the bigger picture. We aim to understand the unique needs and considerations, as well as similarities, the challenges in the provision of quality and equitable education. We look at our findings with a lens to understand the bigger picture. What do our findings tell us regarding the role of education technology in supporting the education systems of conflict-affected countries? For example, in our policy network analysis, we investigated the unique opportunities and challenges for scaling EdTech in these three countries I've mentioned earlier. Afterwards, we synthesized our findings to identify what are the cross-cutting themes in conflict-affected countries. We identified many similarities, however, also observed unique opportunities and challenges to scaling education technology innovations and policies in each context. Thus, it is important to focus on the bigger picture and see how our findings may apply to other contexts, but also recognize the fact that sometimes one solution that works well in a certain context may not directly apply to the other. Secondly, including various stakeholders in research and then the knowledge mobilization process is very important. In our policy study, for instance, interviews with experts from different sectors such as the government, NGOs, local organizations, international development agencies, and academia to make sure that our research captures different perspectives and different experiences. We shall then include these actors again in the knowledge translation and mobilization processes and have meaningful discussions together. By bringing these various actors together, we can discuss what our findings actually mean in different contexts. And by adopting a more iterative and participatory approach to knowledge mobilization, we aim to facilitate an environment of knowledge exchange where we collectively create learnings and translate research into actionable outcomes. During the past 3 years of our research journey, we have seen the value of involving various stakeholders in the research and its mobilization process and achieved impact in changing the behaviors of education stakeholders and influencing policy and practice. This collaborative approach can be materialized through regular updates and meetings, active engagement and communication with different stakeholders, building an environment of mutual trust where people share their experiences, their opinions, and opportunities for knowledge exchange where these different parties share their unique experiences and issues that they want to address. I would like to emphasize here that I believe KIX regional hubs are highly encouraging to organize knowledge exchange opportunities and are great platforms for organizing various events to increase regional and global dialogue and collaboration between researchers, policymakers, and practitioners. I highly recommend everyone involved in the KIX initiative utilize the power of regional hubs as hubs of inspiration and collaboration. In closing, I would like to encourage our audience to view the challenge of local, regional, and global collaboration as an opportunity, embrace the potential of working together across different contexts, and bring different stakeholders together in their journey. The impact we can achieve through this is unique, and by working together, we can create brighter future and strengthen the national education systems together.
That's great. I love the message of really, taking advantage of those hubs and bringing people together. So Selin, this has been great to chat again after the conference, and we're excited about, War Child and their future work. So thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. It was a pleasure having this conversation with you, and I'm looking forward to listening to the upcoming episode.
And this concludes our KIX EMAP podcast. Of course, the opinions expressed on the podcast are solely those of the host and the guest. The KIX EMAP podcast is made possible by KIX, which stands for Knowledge and Innovation Exchange. KIX is an initiative of the Global Partnership for Education. Globally, KIX is administered by the International Development Research Center in Canada. NORAG in Geneva hosts one of the 4 regional KIX hubs. Find us on the NORAG or GPE websites, where you can subscribe to the podcast and newsletter, or learn about our other activities, including KIX research project updates. Additionally, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube at KIX EMAP. You can also directly subscribe to the podcast on Spotify or SoundCloud, and you'll receive notifications of each new podcast episode. Thanks for listening.